Hey, boys and girls, this is Nancy A. Shenker, the geezer proofer, here to help you understand the difference between being a geezer and being a beezer. And you could be a geezer at any age. A geezer is somebody who's just stuck and is on like remote control and just keeps doing the same things over and over again. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It can be very comfortable to stay put. But beezers are people who be curious, be reinventors, be active, and you could be a geezer or a beezer at any age. So I am here today with somebody who I met probably a couple of years ago on LinkedIn, like I did with many of my guests. And we both kind of float around what we call the longevity community or the aging community. We have to come up with a better term for it because the vast majority of the population will be over 50 in the not too distant future. So it will be normalized the same way technology has been normalized. So aging is just a part of life. And Bonnie is spending her life and her career right now dedicated to helping people understand the impact of aging in the workplace. And something that she and I have in common is we both love the term badass. So hit it, Bonnie, introduce yourself and tell our audience a little bit about what you do.
Oh, thanks, Nancy. And it's great to see you. And I'm honored to be on your podcast. Thank you.
I'm honored to have you as a guest.
So yeah, really my work now is focused on gendered ageism in the workplace, as you said. But the research that I've done shows that gendered ageism happens at every stage of a woman's career. So, I mean, I think a lot of our space is focused on maybe over 50. And I wrote the book Not Done Yet about women over 50 in the workplace. But the research really confirms that it starts as soon as women enter the workplace, right? My research showed that 77% of women under 35 experience very similar types of ageism that women like over 55 do.
Yeah, I just have a close acquaintance who went out on maternity leave. They brought in a senior guy who then brought in all of his bro friends. And when she came back from maternity leave, they eliminated her position, which is we, having both worked in corporate, know is like a euphemism for getting fired. And so, she's not fighting it. She knew it was a possibility, but yeah, she's way younger than the two of us. And just because she happened to decide to have a family, she got axed. And
yeah, well, it's interesting because women between the ages of 35 and 40, 60% face ageism, according to my research, which is all about the motherhood penalty. But anyway, how did I get here? I started, and a lot of people don't know this, as a kindergarten teacher. I have a master's degree in education. And when I got a divorce with two little kids, I needed like a job that was going to pay the bills. Long story, I answered an ad to be a medical secretary, and they rejected me, and they said, they were going to train me, and then I was going to leave. But then they called me back and they invited me to interview with a healthcare management company that ran cardiac rehab centers. And I got the job. I don't know how. I was not qualified. But I mean, and that's a whole other story. But after a year and a half, I was managing 11 of those centers up and down the East Coast. And that's kind of like a theme of my career. I would see opportunities and a door would be open maybe a little bit and I'd kind of move my way through.
well,
And
that's your qualification, Bonnie. You're a hustler. And, we as women tend to be very hard on ourselves, but I could never be a kindergarten teacher, like standing on my feet for an entire day with other people's children. So, compared to that, corporate life was probably a day in the park.
And so I really worked my way up from that entry level, to being CEO of a national company. And I did get that job at the age of 50. But when I left the corporate arena, and I won't go into my whole resume, I really wanted to be a coach. I really wanted to focus on professional women, and that has been really my focus since I became certified as a coach in 2007. Um, in 2015, I wrote my first book, The Politics of Promotion: How High Achieving Women Get Ahead and Stay Ahead, which is how do you navigate, the corporate environment and deal with the politics, a lot of it being gender bias and ageism. And then a couple of years ago, I wrote Not Done Yet, which is about women over 50. But I'm an advocate for gender equality and definitely focused on how women can be successful in the workplace.
Yeah, and it's funny because many of us at all ages do suffer from a fairly heavy dose of imposter syndrome. And I was just telling someone the other day about how I majored in English and psychology. I was kind of like a, bougie hippie chick, and then wound up working in financial services and probably felt like a fraud for most of the 20 years that I was working at Citibank and MasterCard, not because I was bad at my job, but because I felt unqualified. And if we feel unqualified, then that ends up kind of oozing out into everything that we do. And
Nancy, that has everything to do with uh, the limiting beliefs that we have. Um,
I call that the handcuffs in your head. I have
or,
an
or the
episode
inner
just on
critic,
that.
it's been called, right?
Yep, yep.
But, especially when it comes to women and aging, those kinds of limiting beliefs really hold us back from getting jobs, from getting interviews, from being successful in the workplace, because we believe all the ageist stereotypes and assumptions that maybe we're too old to learn new things, or maybe we're not pretty enough, attractive enough, those kinds of things then lead to us holding ourselves back and not doing the things we need to do to be successful.
We're not asking for what we deserve. It was funny. I was just on the phone with a client yesterday, and I was telling him about, the statistics that Janine Vanderberg and I had just shared on LinkedIn about the pay gap and how it gets bigger as you get older. And so I said, and in summary, I'm asking you for a raise. And, he laughed because we are both of the same generation, and he is sensitive to that. And I did tell him that I sounded like I was joking, but I really wasn't, and that I am asking her for a raise next month on the project that I've been working on. So, some of it is just having that inner mojo to be able to say, no, this is what I deserve. I have been working, you've been a coach since, what did you say, 2007, before coaching really became a thing. I've been using social media since 2005. So doesn't that mean that I've had more successes and failures than someone who's only been on Instagram for 2 years?
But getting to your point, it's like women, we really need to understand our value. I mean, that's what it comes down to,
Yes.
is what do we bring to the table? And so I coach a lot of my clients around identifying their value proposition, which is how your work contributes to positive business outcomes. Because if you're trying to position yourself for a promotion or for another job, you want to know how you can help others reach their objectives. I mean, that's what resonates with people. There was always this talk about the elevator pitch, which I never liked, because it's all about it's me, 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 and people could care less and they tune out. But when you know your value, you can then really connect what you bring to the table with what they're hoping to achieve or what they want and need. Then people listen. That's powerful. That's effective. And at the same time, it's really authentic.
Yeah, it's marketing 101, is how am I going to benefit you, as opposed to this is me putting on my makeup, and this is me dancing around on TikTok, and this is me, as opposed to I have this skill, and here's how this skill can help you. And to be able to quantify that and to be able to speak about that with confidence. And we're living in an era when upskilling is so much easier than it used to be. When I was in my early days of my career, I knew that I needed to get a graduate degree to make it to the next level. And I had to go to NYU at night, twice a week or 3 times a week for like a year. And now, because of online education, you could take full advantage of that. My older daughter is a teacher, and she's been taking some online courses to get new accreditations. My younger daughter got a certificate from Yale in sustainability. So she's able to even get an Ivy League education from the comfort of her home, while
I mean,
she's
there's so
building
many
her family.
opportunities now. There are podcasts, there are online courses, and when you're looking at, well, how do I stay relevant in the workplace?
Yes. I
How
was
do
going
I
to,
stay
that was my next
marketable?
question is, if you're over 50 and you're struggling with finding work and you don't want to be like folding clothes in Chico's, what are some things that you could do to qualify yourself for today's jobs?
That's right. And really taking the lead on this, reaching out to your employer, perhaps, because maybe your company offers either courses or reimbursement for courses, to speak with your manager and say, where do you think, what skills do you think I need to improve on or expand so that I can continue to perform well, now and in the future. And then another thing that I really like to suggest is, to do research about some of the upcoming trends, whatever they are in your industry, and then find out more about it and do research and maybe, take a course in that. So you can come back to your team, your department, your manager, and offer value because now you have something new that you can share that will help everybody.
Exactly. And it's hard. I mean, if you're, if you've been out of work for a while and you've been getting continuously rejected, I could see how it's easy to like fall into that. I'm not qualified. My career is over. I had a slump a couple of years ago when my content writing work had dried up and I wanted to make sure that I was bringing in an income. So you know what I did? I interviewed for a job at Warby Parker, which they love hiring people over 50 because many of us wear
Yeah.
glasses. And I nailed the interview and I got the job offer, and I ended up not taking it because a number of reasons. And then I got a huge writing project and I didn't need to do that. But I'm glad I did. One of my favorite books is The Power of Regret, because everything that maybe doesn't work out for you still has a learning component to it. And we, I think, as a generation, have to get over that, oh, woe is me, my life is over, I missed
I
the
mean,
tech
Nancy, we were
memo.
just talking about that at the beginning of this segment, right? Because
Yeah.
that's all the stuff that holds us back. So, we don't pursue learning opportunities. We don't, and I love what you did because the more you can practice at interviewing, the better you are, right?
Oh, and the
Maybe
more it
that wasn't
reminds the more it
that.
reminds you of your skill set. I mean, I ended up telling this story about how I learned the first POS system in Macy's in college. And I'm like, if you're worried at all about my adopting new technology, here's a tangible example of when I had to do that. And so, for those of us who are of a certain age, being able to look back on all the things that we did master along the way is a really good way to give us that self-pep talk, because some people don't work in corporations and they're kind of out there on their own, or they lose their job and they're not quite sure what to do. So, I really do believe, and maybe I'm naive in this respect, but I do believe that if you really want to work, you can work. It's just really a question of what you're willing to do to get to stay in the game, as it were.
Yeah, being resilient, being flexible, looking for opportunities maybe outside of the box
Yeah.
or outside of your comfort zone initially. And who knows? I mean, when I needed a job and I had two little kids to support, and I had a master's degree in education. I mean, I didn't, you know, entering the business world, but I was upfront with them at the time. I said, look, I'm not even balancing my own checkbook at this time. But what I did was I came across as somebody who was open to learning and who was smart.
And who
And
knows, we may end up with a teacher as the vice president of the United States.
I know.
And, you know, when you look at what teaching, politics aside, if you look at the skill set that's required for teaching, as I said earlier, that's tougher than most corporate jobs because you can't just like walk out in the middle of the day and go shopping or have to go to the bathroom and just like walk to the
No,
ladies'
you have to be
room.
on, and especially with 5-year-olds. I,
I,
you know,
I know,
I look
I could
back on it
never.
now and I like, really, that took a lot, and then I had to go home to my own 5-year-old. But I mean, um,
Yeah.
the other thing is, and we can talk about this too, because this is really important. The part that I really loved about the job, Nancy, was it was playful.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think we need to bring more joy and more play into whatever we do, whether, professionally or personally. And that keeps us vibrant and that keeps us marketable and young.
Yeah, and that's a criteria for me, and I say that to prospective clients all the time. If it's not going to be fun working with you, then I'm sorry, I don't want to work with you. And that's like a big risk because they could just as easily say, fine, we'll find somebody younger and cheaper who's not demanding fun. But I'm at this stage in my life where, I've been doing what I do for a really long time. And if I'm not having fun at work, then, I'll do something else. Like,
Right.
it's got to be enjoyable. It's got to be
But it's not just
inspirational.
work. I mean, we just need more joy in our lives. Um,
Amen.
and that kind of mindset, because once you're seeking joy, you can find it, right? Once you start saying, oh, I'm going to look for more joy or more things that bring me happiness, it's amazing how those opportunities appear, those situations
Oh,
appear.
yes. And as my listeners probably all know by now, and then some, I've been single for a while. And when you scroll on the dating apps, you come across men who have like their arms crossed and like a meanie face in every single picture. And, people will say, oh, you're too judgmental, you're too dismissive. I'm like, if the guy can't even smile in one picture out of 10, why would I want to spend any time with this person? Like, and saying, well, I don't take good photographs. Well, then find a friend and have them tell you a joke. Like, if you don't ever smile, then I don't want to, life is hard enough without spending all your time with
If
miserable people.
at this stage of my life, if I had to come up with a mantra, it would be to find joy and live in joy. Um,
Well, you're not the only one who's talking about that these days. So
no,
your
because
timing is really good.
yeah. And I was talking to somebody the other day who said, the current political um, environment, at least on the Democratic side, is, this whole thing of joy. And you see how that appeals to everybody. But I
And if
mean,
you're and if you're
from
joyous, and there's a lot of criticism, like you can't just go around with a, happy idiot smile on your face all day, which is true. But if you're truly loving what it is that you do, if you're passionate about the people you're serving, if you like your clients, if you like your boss, if you like the cause that you're working on, then it's a circle. It'll bring you more joy. And if you come into work every day, and again, having worked in financial services, it was an environment of misery and fear, and it took its toll on me. I was perpetually stressed and perpetually miserable, and it was really hard for me to find my own joy when I was surrounded by all of this toxic energy.
yeah, yeah. It's and there, of course, there's all this research that shows that it actually increases your longevity,
Oh, for sure, for
your
sure.
quality of life. Yep.
Yeah, and cortisol, I'm starting to read more about that, the stress hormone, that if you're always worried and you're stressed and you're spinning out, it's going to make you fat, it's going to make you unhappy, and it's ultimately going to kill you. So that's a summary of thousands and thousands of pages of scientific research. If my older brother is listening now, he's an MD, PhD researcher, and he sometimes gets on my case for being too glib. So Andy, if you'd like to come on my show and clarify the impact of hormones on longevity, you're welcome to
Yeah,
do that.
no, of course, I'm willing to provide any kind of links to things that I talk about here, but we're not going to get that granular in our conversation.
No, absolutely. So what's next for Bonnie Marcus? You're like one of my spirit sisters. I just love reading your posts on LinkedIn and seeing the work that you're doing around ageism across all age groups and how it impacts the workforce. So what's next for you?
I don't have any big projects on the horizon, anything new. I'm truly loving what I'm doing. Um, my podcast, through my podcast, Badass Women at Any Age, I meet, Nancy, the most amazing women who inspire me. Very often they've gone through so much in terms of obstacles or challenges, and either have shifted their attitude or their life or their career or some of their accomplishments. I mean, I'm just like, it's actually amazing. And
Oh,
so
yeah, especially when you hear stories of resilience and people remaking themselves and single mothers and, women who were at one point in their lives down to their last $10 and then have turned it around. Or, I
oh, that's
travel in a
great.
community of women who are seeking millions of dollars to scale their businesses. And some of them have young kids at home and they get rejection after rejection after rejection. And you're right, like podcasting opens you up to a whole new community of people in the
So, I mean,
virtual
that's
world.
really uplifting. And I took a couple of months off the summer from recording new podcasts because I have so many in the pipeline that I have yet to release. And I realized I miss that kind of jolt, every week of making a connection like we're connecting now, and just listening to other women and their stories. So I'm going to continue to do that, certainly. I'm pretty active on Forbes.com, and also another great avenue to meet really talented, accomplished men and women, but mostly women, who are making a difference in the field of women's empowerment and leadership. Um, I'm still a very active coach. And so I love to do that. I have to say, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing right now.
That's awesome.
I've
That's awesome.
often thought about, well, people say, well, you're going to write another book. Do I? I don't know. If I
Yeah,
did, Nancy, I think it would be a novel. I think it would be something like totally different from, the research and the kind of coaching help books that I've already published.
yeah, I'm actually rebranding on October 9th, which is Ageism Awareness Day. So drum roll, I wish I had sound effects for the big reveal. It's similar to what I've been
Drum
doing.
roll.
It's been about a year and I'm building out my own version of a coaching practice, which will be very different from yours. And maybe we could talk about that offline because I love learning from people who've been there, done that. And it sounds like you have very deep experience in that space. But yeah, we just need to like keep on keeping on. And to quote your book title, you and I clearly are not done yet. And I get all the time from people, you do so much. When are you going to slow down? To which I reply, this is the slow version of me, which is kind of a scary thought, but I don't have young kids at home anymore.
I
My
know.
parents are both gone. So I have all of this time, this free time that I can turn it into whatever I want to turn it into, which is a gift.
Yeah, yeah. I look at it that way too. I mean, my kids are grown. I've got grandchildren who I
Yeah,
absolutely
same.
adore. And that time, that's, that comes in my space of finding joy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That just
And we're
beats
not
my
home
heart.
taking care of them. So they're Mr. Vance.
Well, we take care of them, but then we can go home.
Exactly, exactly. And we could teach them things that they need to know. Like I have a really close relationship. I have a close relationship with all my grandkids, but my 8-year-old granddaughter is so much fun because she's at that stage, going into 3rd grade, curious, self-assured. This is the beginning of that tipping point where we start to lose our mojo. Like, oh, girls aren't good in math, or STEM is boring. And all of that shit gets fed into our heads and it changes our destiny, and not always in a good way. So yeah, I actually taught her how to use AI. So that was pretty cool. How to write a good prompt, because prompt engineers are going to be in demand in the future. So why not pick up that skill set? We were talking about upskilling and reskilling. So, Bonnie, how can you talked about your Forbes column? You're obviously on LinkedIn. I'll put your LinkedIn into the show notes so people can have that. Your books, I assume they're on Amazon, yes?
Yes. I mean, you can also find them and more information on my website, which is
And
bonniemarcusleadership.com.
it's Marcus for those of you who don't have the visual and are just listening on Spotify or Apple. And I do always feel compelled at this point in the recording to say, if you're a visual person and you'd like to see our faces, and we were just like geeking out on our similar hairdos, so you could see that on YouTube. All of my episodes are now up on YouTube. Or you can listen on Spotify, Apple, wherever you happen to get your podcasts. And what's been surprising to me, Bonnie, is that my listeners, some of them are young and they prefer YouTube, and some of them are older and they prefer audio. And, how you consume your media has nothing to do with age. And so I think if you are going to be out there today with educational or inspirational or educational or entertaining content, you kind of have to be on all the platforms, because you never know really where your audience is going to find you. So thank you, Bonnie. This was terrific. And yeah, I just let everybody know where you could find this and all of my other episodes. If you'd like to be a guest, you can email me at thegeezerproofer@gmail.com, but that is likely going to change on October 9th. Big drum roll. And keep on listening, tell your friends, write a review. You can find me at The On Switch, TheOnSwitch, which is the name of my marketing company, which is kind of sitting dormant while I do my speaking and writing and brand consulting and other things. But I'm not giving it up quite yet. And
You're not done yet, Nancy.
I'm not done. I'm far from it. So yes, my number, as I often tell people, is 120, which is possible. The age expectancy continues to grow every year, and there'll be lots and lots of people over 100 in the future, and we'll be living very differently than our grandmothers and great-grandmothers did.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure.
So thank you, everybody. Remember to be a beezer and not a geezer at any age. And thank you again, Bonnie, and peace out.
Thank you, Nancy.